Hey there. I'm Kirby. That's Colton and Riley. This is From the Logo. Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast. We were off last week. Colton, how was Disneyland?
It was great. I could go into a rant, but I don't need to. Why would adults go to Disneyland, you ask? Well, let's just say you go on rides, that's fun. You eat good food, that's fun. You watch a fireworks show, that's fun. That's it. I'll leave it at that.
That's three strikes and you're in to Disneyland. Good. While you were gone, there was some good things happening for the Trailblazers. They got a few players back from injury, namely Malcolm Brogdon and more namely Scoot Henderson. And like me and you, Colton, were kind of speculating. The team looks a lot different with point guards on the team. A lot more fun to watch. A lot better product out there on the floor. What have you seen from those guys adding to the team? Let's start with you, Riley. What have you seen from those guys? And what do you hope to continue seeing from them?
Yeah, I mean, you guys were right that the team looks a lot more fun, energetic, and connected with a full lineup. And that's what we've really seen is that with Scoot back, with Brogdon back, they're a basketball team again, and they're able to play and to help each other in the ways that they're supposed to and everything. So that's been really great to see. It definitely seems like the ball movement's better. It seems like Jeremy's more comfortable not having to take as much ISO pressure on himself. He's still taking a good number of shots, but it seems like they're a little higher quality. He's getting the ball in his spots a little bit more. His offensive production has definitely gone up, which is a good thing because to switch to slightly negative, the offensive production is still the biggest issue by far. And that it just feels like we got to get Anthony back or someone who can really shoot because as much as I really like watching Scoot, and I mean he's just a total dynamo on defense. And I know you're going to talk about it. Just his energy is infectious, and he's really looks like a force out there. But he's so far isn't a dynamic scorer. And I mean, we are still by far the worst team in the league when it comes to offensive rating. We're at a 105.4. I mean, that's a point worse than Memphis. And we all know how Memphis has looked so far this year, and 2 points worse than San Antonio. We're not scoring the ball well at all. A lot of that is still a hangover from, before the point guards came back, but the rating hasn't really crept up that much with them back. Honestly, we look best on defense. Our defensive rating, we're like 10th in the NBA, and that has crept up since those guys came back. So the point guard play has been great on the defensive side. Still feel like we got to get some shooters out there or someone who can score the ball.
Simons, that's pretty clear. Pretty clear who that person that they need back is going to be. One of the best scorers in the NBA and a 25 point a night guy. It's exactly the kind of player they need, and it's exactly the player they're going to get. Hopefully he'll be back soon.
Good news on that front. Chauncey Billups, when asked today when he thought Simons was coming back, Chauncey said, "I'm hoping next game."
Ooh.
So we could see that soon enough. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it, Riley. The offense has been rough, but some of that was by design coming into the season, I think. It's kind of like last year where we didn't really have a lot of bigs. We know we're in a rebuilding year. Wins and losses aren't everything. But since the guards have come back, the play style has been much more entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
They were a couple points away from a 4 to 5 game winning streak at this point. The collapse against the Bucks was tough to see. I thought
they're competitive in every game, though. They really haven't gotten blown out in a long time with this complement of players on the floor.
Exactly. And, you talked about Scoot scoring. Let's put it this way. He's gotten his career high, 3 times in the last 2 weeks, his career high. It just keeps going up. The last game, he was 6 of 15, right? That's 40% from the field. But he took a full court heave, which a lot of players don't do. You take that away, you're sitting closer and closer to that 50% mark. He shot 40% from 3. Over the last 4 games, I believe, he's shot 40% from 3. That's a tiny sample size. But the point is, the shot is getting better ever
Can
since.
I just mention
his
this with
goggles.
Scoot real quick too? The number to look that I like to look at for him right now is the plus minus. And the Utah game, he was -5, so it's a little bit less than I thought it might be. But the game before that at Cleveland, I'm looking it up in real time. Bear with me here. He was 1 of 8 in that game. Didn't shoot the ball very well, but he was plus 12. He came in and was the catalyst, I thought, in that win at Cleveland. Didn't shoot the ball well, but just the energy that he brings on defense and then zipping the ball around. He had 7 assists. He just adds a dimension to the team that's it's doesn't necessarily show up on the box scores unless you look at particular stat categories like assist to turnover ratios and the plus minus and things like that.
Well, and a lot of the times he's getting good passes and kickouts that they don't always result in an assist. He has a lot of potential assists that I've seen.
Yep.
And you said it, 7 assists in about 21 minutes that game. And that was the one game recently where he shot poorly. The other games he's been shooting, better. He's definitely been hitting a lot more threes. Ever since he's gotten his goggles and kind of got the vision correction, he seems to be playing a lot better. So in terms of scoring and kind of shooting in general.
Maybe he lowered his determination to dominate. Right, Riley?
Yeah, okay.
We needed him to bring it down to an appropriate level of determination to dominate. I've talked about this on the pod before. Overly determined to dominate might be the worst catchphrase I've ever heard because it inherently means that he's so determined that it's to the detriment of himself or the team. We need you to be the exact appropriate amount determined to dominate. Because you might say, like, oh, he was so determined to dominate that he led us to a championship. That means he was the right amount of determined to dominate, not overly determined to dominate. Anyway,
he's tearing apart the old.
That acronym doesn't work as well though, because I guess he likes to be odd. I guess he's an odd boy. That is funny though. I've gotten more than one chuckle out of Riley ranting about overly determined to dominate.
It's too much. It's too much determination.
By definition.
Well, whatever he's doing and whatever, if he's dialing it back, and that's Riley, that actually is a good point. I think he was pressing a little bit at the beginning, trying to live up to the hype and trying to compete with Wemby, which the Spurs are on like a 13-game losing streak or whatever. But, Scoot is kind of settling down. We're seeing
he's 19
every game. He's
19 years old.
Rookie point guard is the hardest position to play in the NBA. A lot of rookie point guards struggle mightily. So we're going to see Scoot blossoming, and I think he's going to look, by the end of year 2, he's going to be a completely different player, and we're going to be very, very excited. So I'm already excited. I think he is going to provide great things for the Blazers. So I'm having a lot of fun.
Let's talk about a guy who isn't 19, a guy who's a little bit older, a guy that really, he needs his flowers. We need to talk about him for a little bit. Malcolm Brogdon has been balling out for the Blazers this season, averaging 18 a game, clearly the leader on the floor. Most of the time, he's the one setting up the plays, getting people involved the right amount, hitting the big shots, being the ball handler in crunch time situations, getting crunch time buckets. I mean, at the very least, he's making a outstanding case for himself to championship contenders that want to go out and get him, improving his value if a trade does come, and I think it probably will. I think he deserves to be on a contender. As much fun as it's been watching him, but also I think he's doing some other work too, as far as setting the culture perhaps in the locker room, teaching some of these young guys how to be a professional, which he is pretty much the consummate professional basketball player. And yeah, he's been extremely important to any success they've had so far this year, I think. So shouts out Malcolm Brogdon.
I think Blazer fans are going to remember Brogdon for a long time, even if he isn't here for a real long time. I think the way that he came in with a lot of professionalism, but other than Jeremy, he is really pretty much by far the oldest guy on the team, and he's older than Jeremy is, but Jeremy's close. Yep. But he really is the only veteran, with Jeremy kind of as playing second fiddle. But he's a point guard, and point guard veterans are supposed to be leaders. And he really came in with, I thought, a great attitude considering he was coming to a, dog crap team basically. And, just a really good mentality. I'm sure he doesn't want to be here forever. He doesn't probably want to, live through a 6-year rebuild or anything, but, really glad he's here. I think he is showing that he deserves a chance on another team, and I'll root for him when he goes to the next team. I think a lot of Blazer fans will.
It's crazy what a good NBA, a quality NBA point guard can do for a team. Just the eye test of what the team looks like with him injured and not playing versus out there available. It's crazy. He just does so much, has so many tricks in his bag, so many tricks up his sleeve. Yeah, it's crazy what a good point guard is capable of in the NBA.
And speaking of players that are really blossoming, under his tutelage and under his leadership, and we were talking about what we hope for Scoot in the future. I mean, we can't go through this podcast without talking about Shaedon, right? I mean, he's
the one that Colton's saving his words for. I can tell him over there. He's like, Brogdon is not involved in the rebuilding plan, so I'm gonna not comment on that. Colton is all about the rebuild.
No, I mean, okay, so hear me out here. Brogdon is amazing for the locker room, and we all know he's going to get traded. That's just how it's going to be. That's reality of where the team's at. I like what Brogdon brings to the table, and sometimes it does bug me when we go all Jeremy and all Brogdon at the end of the game, just because I like giving opportunities to the developing players. There's times where Shaedon doesn't touch the ball for 6 minutes, and I want to pull my hair out, but that's just how it is with vets, right? I love the mentality and the mindset that Brogdon brings to the young guys. Shaedon, this is what we were saying a couple weeks ago when Shaedon was having to do too much and be like basically the only NBA guard out there a lot of times, with a little sprinkling of Skylar Mays, who kind of fell off a little bit at the end there. Shaedon being a play finisher and a secondary playmaker rather than the primary playmaker,
like
has
Jeremy,
been a whole new animal. That's what we were talking about too. That's exactly what we were saying. He was having to play 42 minutes a night. He was having to be the lead ball handler and getting trapped, and that kind of stuff helps with growing, but it's hard to watch sometimes. And now look at what we're seeing from him. He's playing both ends of the ball. Kirby, we talked about it before we got onto the podcast. He is a game wrecker on defense. He's got size, which the Blazers have needed for 10 plus years at the shooting guard position. Please play him at shooting guard. And he can hit the three. He can poster dunk. Can we talk about the double poster dunk sequence from Toumani Camara and Shaedon Sharpe?
Oh my goodness.
Both of those poster dunks on Walker Kessler were so exciting, one right after the other. They were both just as good. I loved that. That is the sequence of athleticism the Blazers have not had from the wing position in Batum, and even before that. It's amazing.
Yeah. Nicholas Batum wasn't throwing down dunks like that.
He had a couple posters, and I actually
like that.
He had some dunks in there.
He was more of like a glider, like soft finisher, but glides in. He wasn't throwing them down
he's not Shaedon. I'm saying Toumani Camara's impact reminds me of rookie Nicholas Batum, where he's kind of become that other starter, and he's played great defense. His shots coming around. Love what I'm seeing from Camara, and I just couldn't be happier that the Suns stupidly threw him into the trade.
He had multiple defensive highlights in the last game. That block at the end of regulation on Colin Sexton. I think the opening play of the game, he had a steal and a fast break layup. Going back to Shaedon Sharpe real quick, though, another thing that not being forced to be the primary playmaker and chucking up, tough shots allows him to do is crash the boards. And that might be one of his best skills as a shooting guard, is his ability to just go fly in and either get the rebound or cause enough chaos for the ball to, get loose and someone else to come through and pick it up. That game at Cleveland, 29 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal. That's stuff in the stat sheet right there. 11 of 15 from the field. Not like you said. He's better as the outlet. Better as the guy standing in the corner, ready to shoot the open three, which he can definitely hit. And if they close out hard on him, he can go around and make a hard drive to the hoop and put someone on a poster.
He can create off that too. He can create as the secondary guy, just not the primary, bringing up the floor every time.
Every time, yeah. Like he's capable of doing that through stretches, but to ask him to do that all game long is a bit much at this stage of his career, at least.
I'm really excited to see what happens for him when Anthony comes back too, because it might take a little bit of time to figure out the balance of who's going to be taking, the bulk of the shots, but anything that can take some pressure off, because like we talked about with the Blazers offensive rating being really in the toilet, everyone knows who's taking the bulk of the shots. It's pretty much Brogdon, Shaedon, and Jeremy. Those are kind of the scorers. And so they're really starting to key in on Shaedon, and especially when he had to bring the ball up the floor, it was getting into that Dame syndrome that we saw for a while there, where he was just getting, especially in the playoffs, kind of getting trapped and not really able to dribble out of it and didn't trust anyone enough to throw it to him. And we were kind of dealing with that again. So having him off the ball is a revelation. His percentages are down a little bit, but I think that's mostly from when he had to bring the ball up the floor. And just to give a real quick shout out of love to our man Nikolai Batum, Brian Wheeler himself had to name an entire catchphrase because of Nick Batum throwing down dunks. Batum shakalaka comes from the dunk. So let's give
he
the man
dunked. I just don't remember him throwing down with the ferociousness that Kamara threw it down with. I don't really remember him cocking it back and dunking, but he was more of a two-handed swooping in and dunking. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering.
Can you not see the late pick to Monty Kamara, his impact though out there on the floor, at least on the defensive end early? It reminds me of Batum. It's kind of like a gem. It seems like early, at least he can take the primary defensive assignment early on, and he can perform well in that role. That's crazy, even if he's 20.
Him, Shaedon, and Scoot as a defensive unit.
Yeah, my
goodness, that they could be fearsome pretty soon.
You add an Alex already
good. Colton's already scrolling the mock drafts.
The defense is already really good. We're 10th in the NBA on defensive rating. I mean, that's pretty solid for a team this young. And that's crazy to have a team this young that's defensive specialized rather than offense specialized. I mean, what do
you guys think will happen when Anthony comes back? Are they going to be able to play that kind of defense with Anthony? Because I mean, in the last couple of years, Anthony has been sort of known as a defensive liability, but that was when he was largely playing alongside Damian Lillard, who is unquestionably another defensive liability. It's not like he's terrible, but it's just not one of his strengths. And with the cast of characters around Anthony now, is it going to be the impact of his not so stellar defensive skills going to be lessened, or is it going to kind of average back out to what we've seen the last couple of years?
I personally don't think. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it probably depends on the lineup. And I know that Anthony will slot in as the starter, and Scoot will probably be coming off the bench for now.
You mean Shaedon?
I just want to know. No, I think Shaedon will continue starting, and Scoot will continue coming off the bench.
Who's Anthony? Who's coming off?
He would come in for Brogdon. Brogdon would come off the bench here. I think we'll see what happens, but that's what I'm saying. It depends on who his minutes are with. We're gonna have to try and see how he looks out there on the defensive end early, especially coming back from an injury. Because I think it's important to evaluate this kind of stuff now. If a guy is a bottom 10 defender, does his offense make up for it? And if Anthony's improved defensively this season, then it wouldn't matter as much. And if his offense is still there and his defense has improved, then we got a whole new issue with figuring out the guard situation. But that's a good issue to have when you have talented players.
Yeah, I personally don't think that Anthony is like such a defensive liability on an individual defense basis that he can't be out there. I think it's really was just an issue of team defense with the team that we've had the last few years. I mean, we had Anthony and Dame as the guards, like you said, Kirby, and then they were trying to funnel people to, Nurkic and Eubanks, and it wasn't a great team defensive scheme. And I think that him being out there with bigger guards or guards that play bigger, that are defensive oriented, and then filtering those guys down into a defense that hopefully can be anchored by Ayton. That's what we got him for. I think that's a totally different story. So I don't think that Anthony's going to come in and be a liability necessarily. But I am excited to see what it looks like if he can play individual defense at a higher level. He's athletic, he's quick, he's long. Why wouldn't he be able to? If he can't, there's really no excuse. He's got to learn how to keep a guy in front of him because he can do it.
He's not really small either. I think he's like 6'3" and pretty springy, athletic. Obviously, he's a dunk contest champion. But yeah, I think that I'm with you guys. I think that lineup is really the factor here, not necessarily individual defensive skills. I think that a lineup of Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, Kamara, that's just completely different. Those three as the smallest guys in your starting lineup, that's just a completely different scenario than playing alongside, who was the starting
Norman Powell.
Oh, Josh Hart.
Josh
Hart and Damian Lillard, like he did last year. That's just a lot less size, a lot less bounciness and defensive ability. And then, yeah, not to mention the big man inside that the whole thing's supposed to be anchored around.
Well, before we move on,
I think it's going to look a lot different.
We don't have to get into the Ayton wars today, but one thing that you talked about, defensive scheme, when you're funneling guys in, one thing I think you can't even argue against it is that Ayton's mobility on switches out on the perimeter have been very key in helping with this defensive rating. So if Anthony gets stuck on a screen, which has happened in the past, or gets blown by, Ayton is at least mobile enough and has shown this early this season that isn't going to hurt you as bad. So Anthony, if he does get hung up on a screen, Ayton can recover in that situation. So that'll be interesting to see how those two pair up as well.
I'm starting to just, again, not to get into the Ayton wars too much, but I will just mention that I'm starting to soften my stance on him a little bit. He's not exactly what I thought we were getting, but I think he's looked a lot better. And at the very least, he's solid. He goes out, he gets a lot of rebounds, and he'll get around 10 and 10 on most nights and do a lot of things, like you said, as far as being mobile, helping out guys, filling up the middle. I wish he was a little more assertive. I wish he was a little bit more attack the rim, get a few more buckets, try to get to the free throw line a little bit more. But it's just not the player that he is in this scenario right now. Maybe he'll continue to figure things out and expand his role, but it's fine. He's I think he does the job as well as most center. He's an above average center at the very least.
Yeah, we just need to see him score more. I think, honestly, I just don't think there's really a great reason for his scoring to be so low. It's the lowest it's ever been on a points per game basis, and his minutes are not down. His minutes are actually up from the last 3 seasons, and his points are down significantly, like 6 points a game, 5-6 points a game. And it's lower than his average as well, his career average. So he can score more than this, get up closer to 17, 18 points a game at least. I mean, 20 and 10 would be fantastic. And I think that if he's going to be our center for a build to a contending team, he's got to be a 20 and 10 guy. And I think he's got that in him. And when I say 20, I mean a soft 20, whatever, 16, 17, 18, that's all fine. But more than 10 and 10. And I think he can get there. He's not there right now.
His numbers do seem to be creeping. Just a second, Golden. His numbers do seem to be creeping up a little bit. Looking at his November, in the 4 games in November, he averaged 8.8 points, and through October, and then through November, he averaged 14.5 points, And towards the end of the month, like the second half of the month, I bet it was closer to 15 or 16 points a game.
And his field goal percentage, as always, is high. That's my thing. I think his team, we were playing a stretch without a point guard, and I think his teams learn his spots. If his pick and pop in his mid-range game and he shoots 60% from mid, that's good. That's whatever, score from the mid-range, get him the pick and pop opportunities. And I think that will come. But if you're hitting your shots that you're getting, just keep hitting and getting those shots, I guess, right? Like, it's not like he's
Not
shooting like
rocket
Nurkic
science.
finishing, he's not shooting 48% from the rim like Nurkic does. So just keep getting him the ball. That's all we have to say about that.
That's all I'm asking for. That's all
And
we're
that's
asking
all
for.
I have to say about that.
That's all. No Ayton worse here. We're good.
Get the man the ball. Let him go to work.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah, show up too, man. Keep being consistent. Don't take nights off. I'm begging you. I need you to shut up, my dad, please, Ayton.
He hating Ayton.
Dominating. All right. Anything else you guys want to discuss about the Blazers, or should we move on to talk about some other stuff?
Real quick, do you think the Blazers are going to use their exception that they got from the Robert Williams injury? Sign somebody. It was a good size exception, like $6 or $7 million. They could go get somebody potentially.
When does it expire? Do you know?
I don't.
They might save it for after trade deadline if it's good for now.
Is there any free agents out there lurking? I mean, like, yeah, there's probably somebody, but I don't know. I assume they'd probably go get a big. What was it?
March 10th is the deadline.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe a trade deadline special. Try to figure something out there, depending on how competitive they are. I assume at this point they'd probably go after a big guy, right? Legit backup for Ayton.
That's what we need. We need some more size because we are pretty thin down there now. We're
Although
back in Guardland.
Shout out Duop Reith. He has played pretty good. He's established himself as the clear number 2 center. And I mean, the dude can shoot. The dude can play. He can pass pretty well, and he hasn't looked bad. It's not like a huge fall off, really.
Great barrier.
He's looked good in stretches for sure. I don't know how long that lasts. I don't know if he's growing and if he can develop into like a legitimate long-term backup. Probably not.
He's like 29.
He's looking better than Moses.
27.
Oh.
27.
Okay.
I sort of thought, I don't know, I could be getting too high on him, but I was sort of thinking, just looking at his stats and seeing a big guy that can shoot like that. I guess he's only 6'9", so he's not like really, huge, not a legit 7-footer or anything, but a big guy that can shoot. He has potential to make it in the NBA, make a career for himself over the next few years. I don't know if it'll be, as a legitimate option for the Blazers coming out. You're shaking your head, Colton. You're sensing another Brandon Williams.
I just want to tell you guys, this guy puts up about as many threes per 36 minutes as Steph Curry. So I don't love that about every possession ends in a Reith 3. Although when he's hitting them, it looks nice. Sometimes
36% on the season. It's not like god awful.
Is it enough to take as many as Curry would shoot in the amount of times he's out there? I don't think so. He's been good.
Isn't that like what Dame shoots is like 35, 36%?
Okay. Are they wide open?
It's all about volume.
Are they wide open Reith 3s or are they 40-footers? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying
he needs to learn to get fouled on him like Dame does.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could have rose-colored glasses for him. I tend to do that for Blazers players. All right, you guys want to talk about some other news in the league?
Yeah.
So the Blazers' next game, is it tomorrow? I just had this up and now I no longer do. It is, in fact, Wednesday, December 6th. They're playing the Golden State Warriors in San Francisco. Blazers need to win that game for a few reasons. It would be very nice, so they could get some momentum going, get some of those young guys some buckets, get Scoot out there comfortable playing against maybe the best point guard to ever do it. But also we need the Warriors to lose because the Blazers own their first round pick next year. Top 3 protected, is that right? Top 2, top 3? I can't see your hand. I could only see half of your hand. Top 4 protected, so they can't be too bad. Can't have them be one of the 4 worst teams in the league. But they need to lose, and they have been losing 9-11 to start the season. Injury concerns. Thompson looks like a shell of the player that he used to be. Wiggins not doing anything real special. Draymond Green is punching or tackling or choking someone out every other game. The Chris Paul experiment, while him and Steph Curry have seemed to develop some chemistry, Chris Paul is averaging 7.3 assists on 1.1 turnovers. That's a pretty good assist to turnover ratio, but not scoring the ball really, only 8.9 points a game. And just the lack of size with him in that lineup breeds a lot of questions. No real young guys stepping up this year. I don't feel like. I'm not super impressed with Kuminga, although maybe one of you guys can defend Kuminga. 11 points a game for him coming off the bench. But yeah, Warriors look a little shaky, maybe shakier than they have in a long time. They're currently sitting outside of the play-in looking in. What do you guys think? Do you think this will continue? Do you think they're going to be outside of the play-in looking in? Do you think they're going to manage to sneak their way in? Or do you think they're going to explode as the season goes on and, make another deep run like they've done for the last 10 years?
Go ahead, Riley.
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of faith in how the team's looking right now. I don't necessarily think that they're going to crash and burn. I think that they're well coached. They have some good stability still with some of their star players, but I also think that other than Steph, their star players aren't what they used to be. And I think I see them kind of staying right down there in the play-in, 9, 10, 11. I think there's a good chance that they'll probably do better over the course of the long season than Houston. But I don't know that they're catching LA, New Orleans, the other LA. They're going to be right down in that mix. And yeah, I see them finishing probably between 9th and 11th, which is right where we want them.
If Steph goes down there, screwed. That's the thing. And I don't think that they'll be worse than the Wizards. I don't think that they'll be worse than the Spurs. I don't think they'll be worse than the Blazers. And I don't think they'll be worse than the Pistons. And,
that's impossible.
The Pistons are historically bad. And
when aren't they? They're breaking records every year for being historically bad.
Yeah. But I think that the Warriors will finish in the play-in probably as the 9 or 10. If the Blazers can get a high lottery pick from their own and a mid lottery pick from the Warriors, 8th or 9th pick, now we're cooking with gas. This is what OKC did last year. They got 2 lottery picks. One that was their own, that was high. Another mid pick. Look where they're at now.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of, the teams that we need to do poorly in order to keep Golden State, floating up there, we need San Antonio and Memphis to keep sucking, and I don't think that's going to be an issue because they're looking really, really bad. I think they're going to keep us from getting a number 1 pick this year, or being up there. I think San Antonio is gunning for another number 1 to pair with Wemby. There's a lot of rumors that they're going to be active at the trade deadline, but what does active at the trade deadline mean for this team? They don't really have anything to offer. It's going to be guys like Devonte Graham and Osman and McDermott. I mean, what do you really? You're not going to get the guys to pair with Wemby for a contending team with those trades. They might try to get a little bit better, but do they really want to get better? Just ride it out, guys. Just become what we know you want to for this season. Pair someone awesome with Victor and screw us all for years to come.
Rookie of the year, Chet Holmgren for Rookie of the Year. Shout out.
Maybe.
I was telling you guys before this season, he was going to be a problem, and he has been a major, major problem for the league. He is playing efficiently, playing great defense. He's all of his advanced stats on both ends of the floor are like tops in the league in some categories. It's crazy. He's been a monster.
Well, Colton, did you have something to talk about, or are you done for?
I do want to give a quick shout out. Two teams, one in the West, one in the East. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the #1 team in the NBA at this point in the season. That's probably the first time this has happened in their history as a team. Cat has been amazing. All the Cat haters. I was on the Cat is not that bad wagon, and he's proven people that he's been pretty good.
That sounds like a real firm position you're taking there.
That was what I said. The Cat is not that bad wagon. And Anthony Edwards, who I compare
baller
to, I think Shaden Sharp is a great comparison for Anthony Edwards is a great comparison for Shaden Sharp. He's been amazing. Gobert's even playing well. Kirby, you said it. Mike Conley. They got Jaden McDaniels. They've been fun to watch. The other team in the East, quick shout out, Orlando Magic. Another team that is never good, it feels like, when you look at them. But this year, playing great defense. Shout out Paolo Banchero.
14-6 for the Magic, 15-4 for the Timberwolves. What the hell is going on? This is not the NBA that I know and love.
Forget all the small market bull crap that we've heard over the years. We've got Minnesota as the best team in the league right now. Keep it going. And then Denver and Oklahoma City right there. We'll see what happens
in the playoffs and all these teams get bounced by Scott Foster and the Los Angeles Lakers. Thanks everyone for watching. We will see you next week. I assume we will be back. No Disneyland trips coming up for any of us. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys.